Okay, we're down near Stratford-on-Avon and we're going to look at the archives of the UFO files of John Hanson of the Haunted Skies. Let's see if he's in. Hi John, how are we? How are we good?
Okay, it's good to see you. Good to see you as well,
okay,
mate.
hello.
Right,
yeah.
Thank you very much for coming up. I've organised a bite to eat and get you a cup of coffee in a minute.
Fantastic.
Very kind of you. Yeah, coming out of the cold. Right, so this is what Shirley and I, or Shirley has put together. You know, this is a room divider. Showing so many fascinating articles and photographs, and most of them, of course, are very familiar to me. This is part of our quite vast collection of files, and as you can see on the left-hand side, the room divider with selected items posted on it, so that people can see for themselves. Right, well, first of all, as you can see, I have some books on UFOs, some very interesting books, and thanks to people that have, particularly my esteemed friend, Steve Wills, that's helped me. We've got stuff from Kevin Goodman. As we walk down here, as you can see, we have so many files, personal papers, documents, letters, photographs, in the main, presented chronologically in all of these files, so this is work in progress at the end.
Okay, John, thanks for inviting myself and Matthew today. The YouTube video of yourself for the Secret Vault, I think, went out a month or so ago on Matthew's channel. We're here today because that was filmed a number of years ago, and just a follow-up really, and I know you've been involved in a couple of different projects since then, and some sort of exciting sort of things which you'd like to talk to us about today. So thanks for that.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much to the two of you, Matthew and Steve, who I count as good friends, for coming up today and finding out the rate of progress with regard to the, as we aptly call it, the Great British UFO Learning Centre. Now, this consists of thousands of articles, newspaper cuttings, letters, photographs, audio tapes, VHS, and Uncle Tom Cobley and all, which currently myself and my fiancée Shirley Edwards have been putting into chronological order. And you might think that's easy to do, but it actually, when you're talking about thousands upon thousands of documents and cross-references, and also we haven't even cross-referenced the UFO magazines that we have yet, and some of those have got fantastic accounts. UFOSIS, the Tyneside-based group, Omar Fowler's documents and files. So yeah, it's a hell of a project, but it's enjoyable because, as we mentioned before, I do have a passion about it, and it isn't a passion about me or finances, which actually cost a great deal to put together. It's about ensuring that subsequently, in the future, people can see for themselves what actually happened back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and into the beginning of the current century. Because it's important, because without that evidence, how on earth can you make how can you form any conclusion without looking at the evidence? And the evidence is quite simple. As you can see, you yourself have been looking through some of the files, and it is it's transparently clear that over the years the United Kingdom has suffered, if that's the right word, huge swathes of UFO energy and sightings and reports that, as I say, go back to the 1940s and probably beyond that. So that's what we're doing. Many people ask me, as a retired copper, they say, what on earth got you into this particular hobby, as some of them call it? Well, it certainly is a passion and a hobby, but it's a lot more than that. And I got involved in that in 1994 after a colleague contacted me. In fact, even the best of us, impeccable as we are in our memory, can make a mistake. I never made a mistake before in my life till I'm talking to you now, but it was January 1995. So we are all human, aren't we? Right. January 1995, a police officer known to me personally contacted me, and he spoke about this incident in Birmingham when a UFO was reported by members of the public, and then police officers went to the scene and saw this saucer-shaped object hovering above some trees in Sturchley, Birmingham. And I thought at the time to myself, surely there must be a rational or logical answer to this sighting, because these things don't exist. Like the Loch Ness Monster doesn't exist, and UFOs. I always then thought back to the time when I was in uniform before serving in CID for half the service, when I used to plod along the streets at night, and I never saw anything strange apart from other problems associated with us humans near public houses. But seriously, I had no interest in that. And if a chap had come up to me, or a lady had come up to me and said, well, I've just seen a UFO, I would not have the slightest clue how to deal with it, or because I would think they'd had too much to drink, or that they were having problems, psychological problems. So, and it was only when this officer contacted me and I looked into it, did I then discover, over spending the next couple of weeks looking at other reports over England, particularly the one down at Wheatley, Oxfordshire, and I went to see the school teacher lady there, and I interviewed her, and what she'd seen was a D-shaped object moving over the contours of the land. So we're not talking about something going straight across the sky, it's moving up and down over the contours. And she said she'd seen this, and prior to that, she said they don't exist, do they? So somebody else that felt the same. So that spiked off my interest, and from those early days, I became completely involved with recording incidents that had taken place, and I subsequently travelled to all over the country interviewing people, RAF officers, even fighter pilots from the Second World War, even somebody from the First World War. And as you know, I've compiled a number of books called Haunted Skies books. I published 6. So I then did the revised volumes 1, 2, 3 and 4. I did the Holt Perspective 1 and 2, and I can't remember all the books that I've done. But then I've been totally immersed in the archives, but decided that I wanted to do, with the help of a serving firearms officer, Inspector Roy Teague from Birmingham, that I would recruit him, or he would recruit me. I'm not sure which way round it is, because he's a co-author of doing the police book. So I've done the police book volume 1, which I'll show you, and that is currently on sale on eBay. And this book covers the force areas, which, and as you can see, this is in colour. Now, the colour books do not sell. So we produce them in mono, which and again is a bit of a shame, because the colour ones, as you can see, are pretty impressive. And we have there a picture of a UFO, the lady concerned I interviewed. So in essence, I have done my homework, and which is all I can do. And of course, there's the police officer's sighting from Devon and Cornwall, which they told him it was Venus, but of course it wasn't Venus. And the list goes on. So we've done volume 1. We've done, if you can pass me the Wiltshire book, Stephen, I'll get that one. And then we've done also the Wiltshire book, yeah, and that is that's a black and white version. I mean, incredibly, I think that's only about 270 pages long. Fantastic incidents around the Wiltshire area. The Wiltshire area is a second home to me, and I've been out there in the 90s, and well, I've been around there quite a bit, interviewing people, because I think to interview people, we should preserve their reports and sightings for posterity, yeah, which is what I'm doing. A lot of people say to me, well, what will happen if you die, John? What are you going to do with the stuff? Well, currently at the moment, what I'm doing is writing up the documents for. I will show you the second book. This is the second book. Right, unfortunately that cover won't be used for sale of the books. Different covers are going to be used, but that is ready for publication soon. Again, that is in colour, and that relates to quite a lot of officers and also members of the public that have contacted the police to report sightings. But I am working on the third volume, which covers Wales, which is split into 4 force areas: Warwickshire, West Midlands, West Mercia and Yorkshire. I doubt very much whether there'll be enough room for Yorkshire, so there will be a 4th volume. But some fascinating sightings by police officers have been brought to my attention. But yeah, police officers are no different from members of the public. Okay, I've had the pleasure of speaking to so many people over the years that have had some fantastic encounters, some of them close encounters. I think one of the most interesting sightings that I've ever come across, and I visited the scene myself, was 1955 Margaret Fry. And I think you both heard of Margaret Fry, who's well respected within the UFO community. When she passed away, of course, to all intent and purposes, what would the public known about her? Very little, apart from the couple of books she wrote. So it's my job to ensure that we have as much as we can on Margaret, and Margaret has her own files down there. And I think I mentioned the one this morning about the nurses that saw these objects coming over and reported them, and then 2 RAF jets that flew over attempting to chase the object. So for me, that there's so many cases like that. But my feeling is that I don't know what they are, and I don't know where they come from. All I can say is they are here, and they have been here for a long time. Margaret actually thought, I was reading some of her letters last night, she felt that in the main, they were here all of the time. In the sky, we can hardly see them. However, when they come down to Earth, then we see them. So it's all to do with electromagnetic waves and all sorts of things she was pondering about. And why not? I think her father was a scientist, and she was a very well-educated woman. So there's the reality of it. These things are here. They've been here for a long time. But meanwhile, metaphorically, I suppose, as a nation, we just brush it all under the carpet and hope it'll go away. But it doesn't, does it? It will not go away. And as we've seen ourselves from recent publicity from America, but it's been a fantastic journey. And the thing is, I've met so many fantastic people, members of the public, as I said before, as well as RAF personnel. And the other thing that interests me is that my ex-father-in-law served on HMS Kelly, so there's the connection with Lord Mountbatten, and then there's a connection there with the fact that the Duke of Edinburgh was interested in the subject, and a lot of people have, if you like, denigrated him in the newspapers, and even our new king, with you know, some sort of cross-examination, as it were, to do with the UFO subject. I don't know why the tabloids do it, but time and time again, they, as I say, they denigrate these reports. And I always remember a chap off one of the national newspapers that has actually been researching these cases since the 70s. And I asked him why, and he said, well, it's as simple as this. They've got to take it two ways. They've got to take it seriously, but they've also got to portray it in a humorous note. And that's exactly what happened when I did the talk in Rendlesham Forest. That's going back a few years, on one of the anniversaries, and the BBC One show, they interviewed me. But of course, the programme was then put out and ended up with I think it was Keith Lemon circling around the moon on a bicycle looking like ET or something like that. So that is to take the proverbial pee out of it, and then that keeps everybody happy, but not me. A lady from the Sunday Times contacted me 3 or 4 months ago, or was it round about Christmas? Certainly it's something that I haven't discussed with you, you know, before. Well, she said they wanted an article about me on the Sunday Times, and of course I even sent her PDFs of the Hulk book and other books and God knows what. And she sent a photographer up here, or I think they paid a photographer. He lived at Redditch, so he came here and he took something like about 200 photographs. I sat in that chair over there. Anyway, subsequently somebody said, oh, you're in the Sunday Express, Sunday Times, sorry. And I looked, and well, I wasn't too impressed, first of all, as being labelled a UFO hunter. Well, if you would tell me what a UFO hunter is, if I actually should get a medal, because I think if a UFO hunter comes under the umbrella or the catalogue of amassing paper documents and files, I should get the gold award. So I think what they're referring to is somebody that hunts UFOs. As far as I'm concerned, apart from Roswell and other incidents, I don't think they've actually caught one yet. But of course, straight away that minimised it. And that article surely was about me, so it's not a criticism. But of course, my esteemed colleague, who's now living in the States, Nick Pope, was asked for his opinions, and then they put a frame, a still of a UFO. When I was in Rendlesham Forest some years ago, December the 27th, 2000, I filmed an outstanding UFO, and I've been able to correlate that with a sighting at Sizewell B when a similar UFO was also filmed, because I contacted the people responsible. So that was brilliant. But all they did was put well, you couldn't even see the still properly. The amount of information that is contained in here, and a lot of it has been obtained by people we know personally, some of them that aren't here. So as a mark of respect, the least we can do is try and preserve all this stuff, and hope people will come to this Great British UFO Learning Centre and respect what they wanted. You know, I've never had a really any thorough coverage of what I'm doing. I started doing the book, somebody complained. That's right, sorry, recently on the BBC, the presenter who promised to interview me the following month, and of course did a runner, as I say, she asked me, yes, but you're doing the books because you make money. Really? I made a bloody penny, I'm sorry. And look at the commitment here. So for those people that think I'm in it for the money, I wish. I really do wish. But it's been an adventure, and you know, researching and being involved in the subject. As an update, it's we're progressing towards hopefully educating other people, but unfortunately it's a bit of a strange climate at the moment, isn't it? Okay, one case that has always been of a special significance to me, a fascination, is a 1957 Ramridge School UFO sighting, when a number of school children, including a gentleman called William Dillon, that I've met over the years. In fact, I saw him at the UFO conference in Cornwall, which was run by Dave Gillam, but I met Bill there again, and we've communicated with each other. He would have made an excellent editor for Flying Saucer Review. In fact, I was asked if I wanted to be an editor for Flying Saucer Review some years ago, but I have to say I'm a little bit busy. But Bill is a charming gentleman. He's a fantastic witness, and as I say, that's Mr. Dillon there. Right, that's what Mr. Dillon saw and sketched some years ago. I managed to contact quite a few of the children that have been there, including some of the staff. So we could, to some degree, be actually bringing ourselves into the future from 1957 to 1977. The Broadhaven County Primary School, yeah. So that's what the kids saw there, and Bill's been a good friend since. Can I just conclude with regard to Mr. Dillon, just to show you a photograph? You got that one there? That's with Alan Hynek, and also that again is an illustration of what Bill saw, and I can tell you that. That it was, I'm trying to think of the scientists that actually evaluated it, but certainly it was very similar to what was seen in 1947 over the Rogue River, Oregon, by some scientists. So that's fantastic. And the fact that, as I say, Bill has very kindly offered to sponsor us in the near future, and has been a source of much information with regard not only to his scrapbooks that you've seen today, but also the incident that has predominantly played on his mind now for so many years. Another incident that has captivated my attention and interest over the years, of course, is a place that's probably known to you, the Broadhaven County Primary School sighting of February 1977. And you yourself have seen the original illustrations as drawn by the kids at the school, which are of great interest, bearing in mind that on the back of each of those illustrations is a rough note obviously written by the kids as to what they saw. And it's a place I've been to quite a few times, but other people also witnessed UFO sightings around that area. So you know, looking at an illustration or a sketch of something that looks basically and initially quite humorous, it's easy to think, oh my God, the kids must have been, they must have made mistakes. I think that somebody even suggested it was a sewage wagon that had turned up, but God Almighty, where they saw that was halfway up a hill, and on the top of the hill there was a church, and last time I went there, which probably be about 5 or 6 years ago, it was quite neglected, and there was a path that went to the top of the hill from the school, which is no longer there. So there's so many things to look into.
Now, what do you make of this next story? An investigation has begun into a claim that something strange came out of the skies and landed in the Welsh village of Broadhaven near Haverfordwest. Whatever it was spotted 3 times by children from the local school, and now their reports are being investigated by the British Unidentified Flying Objects Research Association. Now, the children say the object had a large dome, it was cigar-shaped and was silver in colour. Well, to find out more, I've just been on the phone to their headmaster, Mr. Llewellyn.
I know that 16 children saw it.
And did they all see the same thing, do you think?
A similarity between all their descriptions. I got them to draw and to write what they saw.
And do you believe it?
I believe that they saw something which is not common in the environment in which they saw it. But whether they've interpreted correctly, I wouldn't know.
But, you know, I'm not a skeptic, my God. Not a skeptic at all. And I'm sure that that's what those kids saw. That's how they conceived it as such. And if you look at all the other hundreds of reports that I've got in here, you'll see that people, interestingly, are seeing, we refer to them as humanoids, alien beings, you know, small creatures, you know, grey and pointed ears and things like that.
Spaceship, I didn't see the man. The spaceship, it looked a cigar shape with a dome on it. It had yellowy, orange to red light on the top of it.
How clearly did you see it?
Well, I couldn't see its face because it was too far away.
Oh, you say you saw a man as well, did you?
Yes.
And what about him?
Well, he was too far away to be seen as well.
My friend Philip here was trying to find a way over the stream, and I was looking at the bushes up the top of the trees. And then suddenly this silver cigar-shaped object seemed to pop up from behind the bushes and trying to take off. Then it disappeared again.
Are you sure it wasn't perhaps just a helicopter or an aircraft from the airfield near here?
A helicopter could land there, but that's private property over there. And if they landed there, they could be prosecuted. And with an aircraft, the only thing that could get in there was a Harrier.
Were you frightened at the time?
Yes.
Why?
I thought there would be a whole army.
So they do basically fall into the same category, but is it something to do with a subtle manipulation of our brains? But whatever it is something we don't normally see. But so then you think to yourself, well, how come you've looked through the files there? How come, I think 78 was was it 78 we looked at? There was quite a lot happening in there. There was little happening in 1980, oddly enough. When I say little, probably about 100 sightings, and then of course the famous Rendlesham Forest sighting. So why the wave years? And this is the problem. People have tried to explain it. They've said it's to do with Mars, to do with the stars, to do with this. Basically we don't know. But it was fascinating to go down there and talk to David Davis, is one of the main witnesses, and I've got photographs and a bit of film but fascinating place. And as we were going to talk about this, and we did before, off the record, not there's any difference what we're going to say, but Randall Jones Pugh was a charming gentleman. I went to see him. He was a local Bufora. He was a veterinary by occupation, but he was a Bufora investigator, and he, as I say, he carried out a lot of investigations that had his own sighting. And Matthew had the pleasure, the privilege of interviewing him yourself. Can you just outline to me now, the roles are reversed, as they say. I'm not putting the camera on him, but how did you find him?
I went there thinking I was going to get lots of UFO stories and witness stories, and I found that he had a very big belief in God, religion, and yes, he seemed to think that it was demonic, a lot of the UFO stuff, and to be avoided at all costs by anyone that experiences it.
So anyway, I walked along there, enjoying the cool of the night. It must have been about 1:45 in the morning. And I wandered along, and suddenly something flickered in my right eye. And I looked up, and there I saw a huge ball. At first, that was my original impression. I was quite fascinated. It was a sort of hazy golden yellow colour, with, of course, what we now know as the typical UFO shape, you see. That is, this was the little ellipsoid thing on top. And it was so low, I could see the windows on the outer rim. Now, I had no knowledge and no interest in this phenomenon, and my immediate reaction was that I was seeing a man-made satellite. You know, one of these things which zoom up and do whatever satellites do. So I strolled along until I come to the toilet block. And this thing was coming very, very slowly, and it was quite low. Anything actually between 500 and 1,000 feet. So low I could make out clearly, quite clearly, the various windows and so on, you see.
I often wonder, because I've come across quite a few people, investigators, that have formulated the opinion after many years of research. Reverend Paul Inglesby comes to know, who was a friend of, Lord
Hill Norton.
Lord Hill Norton, sorry, my mind was drifting there. Yeah, it don't matter. I mean, we nobody's perfect. And he wrote to me a number of times, and then he split up from Lord Hill Norton because obviously because he sensed that it was demonic. But, you know, I mean, just listen to us, demonic. I mean, really, it could be bloody well demonic. I mean, who knows if it isn't? But that's just an expression, isn't it? If it is demonic, we would then perhaps link it with the paranormal. And I certainly know from my research, not into the paranormal, but many people I've spoken to that do have paranormal incidents that take place after a UFO sighting. And some of those are mechanical, electrical, all sorts of things happen to people. So is it possible? And there is a link. It appears that it might be a link. So if there's a link with the paranormal, so why then can't we then perhaps feel that there is a link with it is a demonic link, especially some of the creatures that appear. But again, I'm not a scientist. I'm just like yourselves, just average intelligent person that is fascinated by a subject that is quite often denigrated by so many others. But I'm sure that there is a connection. And enough people, of course, have found themselves in some pretty frightening circumstances after close encounters. So,
what are your own religious beliefs, if that's the case?
I ain't got any.
If you believe it's demonic.
My own religious belief is when is Steve?
That there's a heaven and a hell if you believe it's demonic, surely, or.
Well, I'm only. I don't. Well, okay.
I'm just curious.
No. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm. Let's say that I'm a man of Christian beliefs. I don't go to church. When I was a young boy, my parents I used to lived in Halifax, Yorkshire, and they used to send me to church twice a day. I respect. Of course, I respect religion. But I, as I say, as far as the UFO subject is concerned, there definitely seems to be a correlation between UFOs and religion. I'm sure a lot of religious people would be quite offended by that, but I'm only really looking at the evidence, and you've seen some of the evidence today. So is there a connection? I don't know. That's my own opinion. And as I've said so many times, it is up to the individual to make their own opinion. But I've met enough people that we talk about, are they nuts and bolts? Well, I'm pretty sure they're nuts and bolts when they interact with human beings. And of course, they interact with the ground. They leave marks. There was that one case at outside Warminster, where the couple returning home saw this triangular shaped object on the field, went over to look at it. It took off, and he had some quite nasty injuries to his chest, which he had till the day he died. And that was they analysed the flint and found that some of the flint had been melted, which meant a heat force of just something that is incredible to think about. So they are dangerous. Whatever they are is dangerous. But again, I can only, like you, I can speculate, I can presume, but I don't know the answers. But yeah, physically, these things interact with people. Excuse me. and will leave all sorts of not only psychiatric problems but physical problems with them. So that suggests that a physical contact, or nuts and bolts as we like to call them, but whatever these things are, they can appear as nuts and bolts, solid objects. But then, of course, I mean, you yourself were shown the pictures, the photographs taken by a friend of mine in Norwich, David Bryant, that I think you've met, Steve. And he took them in Rendlesham Forest. And so they certainly appear to be humanoid shapes or aliens, but that's as far as I can take it. But they shouldn't be there, but they are there. So maybe Margaret was right. Maybe these things are all around us as we speak, but given certain circumstances or criteria, they don't show themselves. And another case that was brought to my interest was by Chris. He's a gentleman that lives in Kent, and he was part of the Kent UFO Society back in the 90s. And he did a thorough investigation into what he calls the Burr Marsh incident that happened on the 8th of March 1997, when a journalist, I think it was Sarah Hall, was on her way home and she saw this triangular object hovering in the sky over the home of the local MP.
Michael Howard.
Michael Howard, thanks. Yeah, Michael Howard. And as a result of that, Chris, that's him there, launched a thorough investigation into it, lasting months. And it is clear, this incident's been covered in the Police Book Volume 1. And it's clear that on a number of occasions threats were made to Chris, and some intimidation also happened by, as I say, by people that were bogus. So obviously the authorities weren't happy with this investigation. But subsequently, as I say, Chris conducted a fantastic investigation with his colleague. And as you can see in front of you, or the reader can see, there is some loads of information, sightings, reports, which for me, once again, shows that, yes, that's fascinating, the triangular UFO. But I mean, if we were to, if I was to get Steve to buy me a pint of beer for every triangular UFO, what I'm saying to you is that you've looked through the archives yourself, and you could see that 97, 98, 99, a huge number of people saw UFOs, and some of them were triangular. My feeling is that they are all triangular. You might think, well, triangle, that's a black triangle with lights in the middle and lights at the outer edges, but they are essentially all that. It is the fact that they probably manipulate the brain to see in a black triangle, thinking, well, that is a different craft from the others. But they are all basically the same. They originate from the same exotic source. That, again, is my opinion. I have reports from people who've seen the lights fly away and come back. And think about it yourself, depending on how you're looking at it, the position of the object, you probably see something different on it. And so, yeah, I don't think there's different craft. I think they're all the same craft, but depending on the angle they're viewed, depending on how much they show themselves to us, yeah, so the triangular UFO is perhaps the biggest sighting for me of the 20th century, because even pilots have reported seeing them. So then that leads to this feeling, or this opinions based by quite a few people, that the triangular UFOs are examples of top secret covert technology. Well, that, in my opinion, that's highly unlikely, because we were seeing them at the turn of the century. So, and I'm talking about last century. So that was before we could just about get a balloon in the air. And then you talk about waves of sightings that took place in the 1900s. In the first folder, we've got them going back to the 13th century. And as I said before to people, if we had an internet, if we had Facebook, if we had all of this for the 13th century, where the hell would we be now? Because these things were showing themselves there, but there was no source of communication. And of course, if we went out there and talked about UFOs in the medieval ages, we'd end up getting burnt. We'd be classed as witches, wouldn't we? Yeah. So that's it for as I say, that was the Burmarsh incident, well investigated, and things like that can attract the wrong people, as you know yourself. And for years, I've come across many cases where I don't know, presume they're government officials, but these people have come along. There's no need for them. We go back to, well, I will say this, Steve, we go back to prime example is you, not you yourself, but you interviewed Nigel Frappel. Mm-hmm. And that was what's 57 or 50. Yeah, Nigel had a sighting when he was on in Wincanton, Somerset.
And as I come to the crossroads between just above Bruton, I saw this big orange light 100 yards up on my right hand side, adjacent to a thatched cottage. So I thought the thatched cottage was on fire. So I cycled on a bit, but by the time I got to the cottage, there was nothing, no light at all, nothing. So I stopped and got off my bicycle, and there was a 5-bar gate adjoining the field. So I looked through the door and I saw this object in the middle of the field, a big dark object, which I could describe as an upside down plate, as it were. But when I looked closer, it had a dome on it, but in the dome was lights in the dome, a very fluorescent light, like a mauve fluorescent light. So by this time, then I could see something moving inside. You know, sometimes if you look at somebody's window and they got a television on, and the shadows go across, it was like that.
And he was, after the BBC turned up with the big loudspeakers on the top of their vehicles, and they interviewed him because he never actually reported it. I think his brother reported it, but Nigel was taken aside by 2 men and threatened them if he carried on like that, he'd die. So, but that's not unusual. Many other incidents like that. So, who is behind all of these? What have they got to fear? And in a way, probably quite a lot. And then we talked about disclosure, which I've always related to as a Pandora's box. The glimpse inside is quite sufficient. Opening the whole thing could change our whole lives, change the planet. Something else that we keep here, of course, are cuttings, newspaper cuttings, going back to the 1950s. And this is just one file. This is press cuttings for 97 and 1998. And in a nutshell, a huge number of sightings, news of the world, UFO lands, that's obviously the Rendlesham Forest case, Timothy Good, a good man looking for aliens, really? Aliens like it here, claim experts. The truth is out there. Bishops put their faith in aliens. Some of most of the banner grabbing headlines are quite pointless. Oxford space beacon or pie in the sky.
Do you think, John, that the upsurge in reports during the 1990s, certainly I think that's what you're looking at in the mid-90s there, had anything to do with the popularity of programmes such as the X-Files?
I think you're probably right, but in as much that people watched programmes like that, including myself, and it perhaps motivated them to look in the sky and see things. And clearly, that may well be the answer for how, for such a wave of sightings that took place 77, the 97 and the 80s. That may well be the answer, but as you've both seen for yourself, those individual sighting reports, hand signed by the witnesses with their illustrations. I think 96, there was, in 1 month alone, there was a heavy saturation of reports around the Essex area, because Essex area has been certainly the source of UFO interest for many years, going back to the 40s. So yeah, I just think that those what causes the heavy waves, that's the thing though, Steve. I mean, 77, there was a heavy wave in 77 and 76. And so maybe it's something to do with the human psyche or the subconscious or whatever it is, or the influence of the TV, and but we all know what happens with the influence of the TV and the media. It leads to us. Nearly all of the reports I've looked at, the newspaper cuttings, the banner grabbing headline is quite often silly. And an idea why, but you can't take this subject seriously, can you? Because if you could take this subject seriously, we probably wouldn't be here doing this, would we? Because people would perhaps understand more about this phenomena. By the time I got to them, the film had been pretty used up, and this is the best I can do. But as you can see, the thing is rotating, and we will get a better definition as it comes over towards the chimney. The gentleman's name was Morris Ridgely. It still start to clear in a minute.
His camera or somebody's camera needs a cleaning tape.
Right. Well, yeah, but that's the object. I do have the audio, so you can have the audio if you want it sent here as well.
Seems to be sort of like as if it's wobbling on its axis, or
well, it's certainly rotating, isn't it? That was at. I didn't realise it was as long as this. There's something flew over them, but maybe if you have the copy of the film, you can have a look at it. So
what year was this again?
Morris originally about the 70s. You'd have all the information.
This wouldn't have been the 70s. This is VHS video. So
was it? Oh well, I 84 or something. We'd have to check. Hang on a minute. We just might as well just. It's nearly finished as such. They're panning into it now. But that's right. If I remember, it dropped something. And if I can get it to. It certainly drops something. As you can see, it's heading towards the chimney, which is on the right. You can see it. I think it was a Sunday morning when not far off it. Starting to move out of sight. Something, of course, that could have been a bird that came into vision then. But interesting, because I wouldn't know what that was, would you?
No.
Right, you asked me about the apports of stones, which is something I knew very little about until I went to Rendlesham Forest, as I did many times over the years. Went out into the forest with Brenda Butler and others, and the first time they told me about the apports, stones falling to the ground, hot stones. Like most things in life, until you actually experience it yourself, you think to yourself, can't believe that. But on a number of occasions it happened, and normally before this took place, I've got to be careful because we talked about demonic things before, but we sat round in a circle, and for me, I suppose it was quiet meditation, if you like, you know, sat there and looking at your innermost thoughts and just chilling out. And then suddenly you'd hear something fall to the ground, and you throw your light round, and the ground there is covered, and you know that you've been there, Steve. The ground is covered in stones and pebbles, and mostly a lot of forest waste off the trees, so it's quite spongy. And then you maybe pick the first stone up and it's cold, and you go to another stone and it's hot. And you think, how can that happen? And that happened quite a few times. And I spoke to a lady who was a scientist who will not have her name mentioned. And she examined the stone, and she said it's fascinating because it looks exactly like the control sample, which is I sent to one of the stones with it. And she said it is fascinating because the stone, the one that was recovered by you, i.e. the apport, was absolutely free from any age, fissures, fabric, anything. It was as if it just been made. So that was really quite interesting. Well, it was, because there's lots of things happen down in Rendlesham Forest. And then I think I've covered it in the 3rd volume of the police series, is the Thornhill Road, Washwood Heath, Birmingham. That is in the 70s, where a lady there complained to the police that her house and the 2 houses next door to her were being attacked by stones, and things were so bad that the guy next door had to put a steel helmet on. They were coming down like rain, so the police came out and staked the place out. And one of them actually related to something very similar what happened at Warminster. He was really frightened him. In fact, he was so frightened he had nothing to do with it. But these stones were coming down. The army were called in. The army marked the stones and the trajectory, but could not work out what the cause of it was.
Thornton Road, Birmingham. It's not the quiet suburban neighbourhood it seems. 5 of these houses are under siege. Night after night, rocks rain down on them. Glass in every window has been shattered, forcing the residents to erect barricades to protect their homes.
We've had all the panes but 2 go on the garage, which are the big panes. I think they're about 14 foot, with reinforced glass, which cost nearly £700 to be replaced.
And even Sir Arthur C. Clarke sent his crew over here. I think it's on YouTube. They came along and interviewed some of the people there. And say it's a mystery, but apports, if one looks up apports, there's been many other occasions when apports have taken place at people's houses and factories, and there's no explanation. But interestingly enough, I think that it's something to do with the fact that the house in the middle, they'd not long removed the flags, the paving stones in the back garden, and they'd replaced them with something like it came from a local church. And I think I'm firmly convinced if you interfere with these, you interfere with anything that's to do with a church, or I think you're asking for trouble, and that's something I've come across quite a few times as well. So hence the fact that I certainly would not want to be involved in any paranormal research or investigation. Something else that came my way of great interest to me was a lady I went to see called Elaine Waite, living in Southall, London, many years ago. I went to see Elaine. She had some fascinating sightings. In fact, took quite a few photographs myself of things down there. And she told me about when she was some years ago that I think it was 95 it happened, again without checking the files, but she ejected something from her nose and put it in a tissue. As we've outlined before, and Madge is going to put the picture up of the alleged implant that was recovered from or at least a lady called Elaine Waite, ejected from a nasal cavity. I kept at the house for many years, and then when I was due to move from Bromsgrove to Alvechurch, I went into the room where the files were kept, and the file, VIAL, the bottle, yeah, with the implant or the object in it, which is only about the size of the top of your fingernail, and you can hardly see it. Correct, Stephen? Because Steve has seen that in this container. I went to pick it up, and it fell off the shelf in front of me. Below was the bed. It fell off the shelf, didn't even hit the bed. It just vanished in midair. And it's very hard to believe anything like that can happen unless, of course, you've witnessed yourself. In the same respect, it's very difficult to believe that UFOs exist unless you have witnessed it yourself. And if you do witness it for yourself, you realise there is something to it. And so it's just a footnote, but an interesting one at that. And I'm glad that, as I say, that Steve and others have seen it in there. Gone. Where's it gone? Don't know. But we could also say, where's that gone? But going back to the Rendlesham Forest, it wasn't just stones that were reported, and everybody laughs and sniggers. But I was with the people there when something quite warm landed in front of us, and it is funny. Because it was a child's small toy plastic elephant. Now, but where could that have come from? Seriously, I just don't know. But coins of, if you look up a porch, you'll see that not only coins, all sorts of things have come through, but where are they coming through from? And more importantly, what is the power or the energy or the instrument that makes these things? Are we actually manipulating this from our brains? So shades of Uri Geller, who I actually conversed with years ago. I feel very privileged to have been able to send the books, the Haunted Skies books, going back to the early days, to Prince Philip. I admire Prince Philip, and in a way, is he so different from us today, apart from the fact that he's royalty and rest in peace, sir? But is there any difference to us? Because he's a man, he's interested in the subject. Prince Philip has always been interested in UFOs, and that may well be because of his uncle's interest in it, Lord Louis Mountbatten, who was captain of HMS Kelly, under which my late father-in-law, Ted West, Chief Petty Officer Ted West, served aboard. And I do know that we've that I've had information, shall we say, through other sources, that one of the reasons Lord Louis was very interested in UFOs was because some of the men that served with him as well were, as I say, had witnessed UFO activity. And again, why not? We talk about this as if it's something that doesn't happen very often, but by God, if you look through here, you'll see that they're happening. Each and every day things are appearing that we cannot account for. But I felt privileged, and I thought, well, I'll write to him, which I did, and sent him a book, and he sent me sent me this certificate back. Do you want to read it, Steve? Because I haven't got my glasses. No, Steve will do it.
So this is from Brigadier Archie Miller Bakewell, Private Secretary to His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh, from Buckingham Palace, dated 17th of July 2017. Dear Mr. Hanson, the Duke of Edinburgh has asked me to thank you for your letter dated the 27th of June with your enclosed copy of the Holt Perspective. Your thought in writing and kindness in sending a copy of the book is much appreciated. I'm certain he will read it with close interest over the summer. In the meantime, this letter comes with His Royal Highness's best wishes to you, Dawn, and Colonel Charles Holt, and yours sincerely, Archie Miller Bakewell.
Somebody else that I met was George Bernard Dye. He came from Ipswich. I interviewed him some years ago, and he was the bomber or gunner. Sorry, as Steve corrected me before, he was a gunner on board. I think it was Q for Queen, Lancaster bomber. And on one of the missions over France, I think it was, bearing in mind there's so many of these sightings, they saw this object described as like a Christmas tree shaped thing, and as I say, I went to interview him, and he that's the gentleman there. Smashing bloke. He's since passed away. I have a clip of film of him.
Over the years we spoke to him and he said, well, I was frightened you might hit these things, and they would hit us back and retaliate and destroy us.
So what did they look like then?
They were just like orange, yellowy bubbles.
Yeah.
They were glowing. A yellow, little bit of orange coming into it. And all of a sudden they were following us, and we dived and they followed us. We twisted, we climbed, and they followed us.
So it was just as though they were intelligent then, and they need to
I mean, they were in control.
Yeah.
And after, I mean, you saw that after 50 miles, and we lost 14,000 feet of height, they started to fade away.
Yes.
But at times they put on extra speed, and when they sort of, they're going along, and when they did that, there was sparks, things coming out of the tails or behind them.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Interesting.
But what they were,
yes, you don't know.
I never.
Did you ever think it was the other side that hadn't used?
I thought they were probably rocket. You think a lot about this, and I wonder whether they were controlled anti-aircraft shells. But of course, no one's ever spoken about this. I wonder when they were controlled anti-aircraft shells, controlled by radar. But no one ever mentioned, and nothing's been mentioned about this since, have they?
So I apologise if I'm not quite spot on with what I've just said about what he witnessed, but Matthew will have the clip of film, and he will have the other bits and pieces about George Bernard Dye. In actual fact, it was sighted on the 26th of April 1944, and he has subsequently had some other sightings as well, which is not unusual, and that's George, and that's his wife. And it was, as I say, it was a pleasure to interview them. So yes, so many of the pilots. I even wrote to the German embassy in 2000. That's 23 blinking years ago. I think wondering if they'd got any reports from the German pilots. And as I say, they wrote back basically to say that we've got nothing. Of course, and in fact they must have lots, but yeah, there's lots of reports here in 1944 from many pilots. Well, as I say, I've got government records, a result of a search for records concerning the 47 crash near Roswell, New Mexico. But our pilots certainly saw some fantastic things. For me, Michael Swinney was another one. He was, I think it was an Air Commodore again.
Salander?
Yeah, Salander, yeah. Flight Lieutenant James Salander, who was over Essex in 54. I think that was very close to when Jessie Rostenberg had her sighting. In fact, you know, I'm convinced they could well have been the same day. But yeah, what a smashing bloke. James, you can have his video clips as well. Yeah, lovely guy, and he like so many of us got fed up by being interviewed by you know, people like the BBC, and this is what he's told me. And because at the end of the day they just wanted to denigrate it, just wanted to try and find an explanation, and what he saw is typical of what so many others have seen. But the reason why he got some notoriety for what he saw was because the air intelligence officer, and if you turn to your right, you can, that's Derek Dempster, the guy there, see him, that's Derek, yeah, he was the air intelligence officer, and he managed to contact Prince Philip's secretary, that I think was Sir Henry Chinnery, and a result of which that was also conveyed to His Royal Highness. That's Derek Dempster. But as I've said multiple times now, at the end of the day, so many of us have seen fantastic things that at least we should be given the satisfaction or the appreciation that we, and the courage in coming forward. And this is what these guys are all about. They've come forward, and hopefully one day we'll know the real answers. So I will conclude by letting you know, and anybody that's interested, as you can see from the advertisement there, or the flyer, that anybody is welcome to come here and have a look round, and look at the evidence for themselves. That's as much as I can do, and I think there will be a small charge, but I don't think that's a lot to ask for, considering considering things don't come cheap. But there you go. People are more than welcome. It's been a great day. It's lovely to meet both of you, and I can honestly say there's not many men such as Steve and Matthew that are dedicated researchers, and like just like the rest of us, you're just looking for the truths.